Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. Grab your popcorn, your drink or beverage of choice, cup of coffee, maybe a cup of tea, glass of red wine, white if it's your choice, fresh local juice for the kids. Call your mama and your papa, your grandmama and your grandpapa. Call your aunties and your uncles, your nieces and your nephews, your cousins. Call your neighbors and your friends. Let them all know that Simon Says is on. Now, buckle up. We'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode. Now, welcome back. Hope you guys had a lovely carnival, enjoyable and safe. For the most part, it seemed like it was pretty safe. There's so much to talk about. We can't talk carnival, but we see how we can fit it in somewhere down the road. But there are a few things about that we need to address. For the most part, people seem to have fun and enjoy themselves. That's good, but the most important thing is the economy, and if the effect it had on our economy, and if we get a little jilt, we really do appreciate it because we really do need it, right? Especially with September and back to school and all of that. Now, to begin, a little birdie told me that a matter to do with Project Polaris was filed, and a bunch of persons were served. I hear some of them already wearing pull-ups, pampers, nappies, call it what you want. But it's a serious matter, and it needs to be dealt with. And so please stay tuned. Please stay tuned. Don't blink. Don't blink on this one, right? The government of Grenada have upcoming a supplementary budget 2026. I guess it's going to be in the next week, maybe during the coming weeks. Yeah, and they have some interesting things inside there that I want to discuss with you. So, first of all, there's a vote 109. Vote 109, and that is to do with the horrors of justice. And they're asking for an allocation of $2,295,366 to purchase the Bristol's property, which is adjacent to the Halls of Justice compound, to the Parliament building up there in Mount Welldale. And so we buying properties. We able to purchase properties. Sometimes we wonder if we know a lot of wastage took place and bad spending and not being able to manage the purse, and so we broke. Priorities also. They have no clue how to prioritize, right? So $2,295,366. They're asking for an allocation to purchase the Bristol's property to put their halls of justice. We have the one on Church Street, Upper Church Street there, that we're trying to preserve. That's there. We have the government house. That's there. But we're purchasing more. Don't forget we purchased the Prairie House on Church Street. That's there as well, right? So then there is vote 120, the support to Venezuela. Big announcement made, we have no money. So we're asking for an allocation for the Venezuelans. Good gesture, asking for $1,350,000, right? Humanitarian assistance for Venezuela. And then there is the government of Grenada wants to give to the Grenada Development Bank $25 million. So we know the Development Bank is in the negative. We know that they destroyed that bank, they mashed up that bank, and the bank has no money. So now they're borrowing, I want an allocation of $25 million for growth and resilience opportunities for the Grenada Development Bank. Remember, they gave Andy Williams $300,000 out of the MSME monies. So the monies is support for affordable lending, for housing, student loans, MSME, agriculture, and other productive sector. $25 million. Makes you wonder what's happened to CDB and the World Bank, and so that usually would the Development Bank would borrow money from. Yes, the government of Grenada do make their input at times, and these monies from CDB and World Bank, and so the government has to guarantee them. You can't guarantee if you don't want for yourself, huh? Right? So the government normally, usually. So we've heard nothing about CDB and World Bank, and so towards the Development Bank, and now the government don't have the money, hoping that with revenue raise in the next few weeks, I would say that they can get a $25 million to give to the GDP. And then there is the cost of living assistance program. And they want $10 million for that. And it says to provide for the implementation of a targeted and time-bound package for fiscal measures to cushion the impact of elevated food and energy prices. So all the time, opposition and other citizens pounding and asking for the government to cushion the effects of the rising inflation, and they remain quiet, and their supporters pushing back. They didn't have the money. They don't have the money. So now in this supplementary budget, they're asking for an allocation of $10 million, right? And it says under the arrangement here, the elevated food and energy prices arising from the ongoing conflict in the Middle East started in February of 2026. February 2026. Really? Folks. And then there is the equity contribution to Grenville Commercial Complex Limited. I know that most of you, the first time you heard about Grenville Commercial Complex Limited is when I spoke about it a few weeks ago in comparison to the Grenada Asset Bank. Because the government of Grenada, Cindy Daughter, the Attorney General, insinuated that this is not the first time something like this happened, that it happened before. And the one they really spoke of was the financial complex. They tried to compare. There's no comparison. And then I brought to you the contribution, the Grenville Commercial Complex Limited, right? All of a sudden, we are now asking for $2 million for additional equity investment to support the advancement of the Grenville Commercial Complex project. All of a sudden, right? So all of this is what they're coming to ask for in the next week or so for the in the supplemental budget. Now, GDB is indeed broke. We know that. The government is budgeting to give GDB this $25 million with the hope that they can raise enough revenue in the next few weeks to come up with this $25 million to lend GDB. Remember, GDB is in the negative, according to Garfin's report. And of course, they have staff bills to pay, salaries and whatever, electricity, all of that. They still have their bills to pay as well. So an injection of $25 million is what the government is planning to give to GDB if they can afford it. Now, cost of living assistance, the $10 million cost of living assistance program. Now, this has nothing to do with the VAT-free days. This is to give away $10 million towards campaigning for the next election. You understand? So all the time we've been starved out, they're waiting for when the election is here, the eve of the election, to try and do all that they want to do. And they're hoping that they can pass a supplementary budget and that there will be enough money in the coffers to do some of these things that they're hoping to do to win the hearts of the voters at the last minute. Put a lot of money, injection into the communities. They already started. If you go into St. Patrick and St. Mark and these rural areas, you can hear citizens telling you, you can get what you want, just say what you want. Say what you want, fridge, stove. The Prime Minister was in St. Mark. He actually rented a house in St. Mark for a few days. And they were dishing out what you need. It is alleged even young kids, children, underage children playing in the streets, were given cash monies. So I guess the government don't have, but NDC have. After they spend out all hours on paying the surrogates and other things, traveling, having a good time, big entourage, private jets, first class if it's commercial, right? Now, this equity contribution of $2 million to the Grenville Commercial Complex also under Vote 120. And a grand total of $38,350,000 they're asking for under the Vote 120. And then we have Vote 129, monies for our favorite minister, Andy Williams, the infamous Andy Williams. Funding for the Sotez Health Center, right? And that is going to cost us a total of $4,603,379.12 with an expected completion date December 2026, and advance payment, that's what they're asking for. There's an advance payment of $460,000 that has been made to the contractor, which is expected to cover works through the end of August 2026. The project is expected to spend EC $1,200,000 between September and December. So that is what they are asking for. No, they are actually asking for $2,676,290. So when the Prime Minister made his debut post-cabinet briefing presentation a couple months ago of dozens of projects, which included the Sotez Medical Station, right, the medical center, he knew he didn't have the monies for those projects. All the roads and so, coming up in the supplemental, they're asking for monies for the roads. The same Penicillin Road to Westerhard Point, all of those coming up, right? Now, so with just 3 months left before the reading of the 2027 budget, and at this 99th hour, to get the projects going, hence the supplemental, they're coming to the Parliament to ask the Parliament to okay the supplemental budget. Did they skip a year where we didn't have a supplemental? Who's doing the math? You know, when you go do your estimates and your allocations, who's doing the math? Why do we always have to be asking for more? Well, one of the reasons is there are always overruns to start with, and the overruns has been the millions, like the RGPF headquarters, 20 million overrun, the headquarters. Can you imagine that? And like the Victoria Park, the overrun was more than what was estimated for the job. The job was estimated at $275,000. The overrun was $295,000. Every single project, everyone. I've never even heard of overruns before. I'm not saying there wasn't. There might have been one or two with previous administrations. I don't know, because I have never heard about this overruns. But that's what happens when you don't have money and you're playing chunks. So it takes longer. And then with the inflation, materials, goods are going up weekly, you could say. So they're going to be hours over, and if you can hurry up and do what you have to do on time. Again, allocation doesn't mean getting the monies. If the government don't have the money now, with revenues down, where are they going to get it in the next 3 months? Well, we need it before the next 3 months, actually. Because by the next 3 months, then we're ready to read the 2027 budget. And remember, don't forget, lest you forget, we are operating in a deficit. The last budget, a $300 million deficit. In the government, if the government have no cash to work, they can't get it done. The companies, the persons, the individuals they owe won't get paid the same way. And we have to remember, in this supplemental, they're also asking for money to pay people they owe. And we're adding to that with the so-called new model, which we'll come to as we move along in this supplemental budget. Right, so we're still on vote 129, monies for Andy, under the upgrade works to the intensive care unit contract, total EC $1,469,837.29, with an expected completion date of November 2026. An advance payment was made of $146,983.73 to the contractor. This is expected to cover up to the end of August. So they're looking for now, this project is expected to spend $1,476,289.23. And that is between September the revised funding requirements identified during the financial year, $2.1 million. And then we have the Sobeys Lot 2 to provide additional appropriation, and that is, they're asking for $5.5 million, and DNS consultant payment for $200K, staffing $200,000, sorry, and instead of KK, so K means 1,000. So let me speak so that most people can understand me. This K thing is a young people thing. And operating expenses, $50,000. Now they want money to provide for additional expenditure for ongoing survey of living conditions, and the payment to contractor for remaining works, inclusive of retention after completion of defects liability period, $2,516,399, a lot of which are monies they owe since 2024, 2025. They are coming to us now in a supplemental budget. They're asking for monies to provide additional appropriation for $200,214.48 final payments for the Mardi Gras roads. It's not saying farm roads anymore. That is the roads going up to the private property up on the heights in Mardi Gras that the government of Grenada built, one towards private properties. Now, before this, the Prime Minister did a whole video saying that it was farm roads. The people in Mardi Gras said, where's the farms? Who farming up there? So now it's just, in the supplemental budget, it's just Mardi Gras Road. And then $133,592.75 final payment for Malmont Road. Malmont Road that was built to get down to the bay where the Prime Minister owns beachfront properties. purchased the beachfront properties in Malmont, and he built roads, and roads to down there. It was also said that there were farms down there, but I guess you can say it's a beach access road to the beach, since the Prime Minister now has lands down there, and they're asking for $133,592.75 for the final payment for that road. And then for the Woodlands, Cafe Boo Hill, and the Calviny roads, $1,022,909.64 for Woodlands, Cafe Boo Hill. When did they do Cafe Boo Hill? Can be any time recently. And the Calviny roads. The Calviny roads. And then they're asking for $601,733.36 for Clark's Court Bay Road, and for a final payment to Penmater Bay Road, $9,435.82. $59,700 for the RGPF License Center. Are we speaking about the building on Dusty Highway that Andy took his bus tour to, where he's going to be putting the South Medical Center and the fire station? Is that the same as the RGPF License Center? Not quite sure, but Andy's asking for that kind of monies there for that project. $15,000 for transportation. Now, we would like to know what transportation Andy is asking for $15,000 for. Is it for that the money he's owing for the bus tour? That little trip where he just showed a fence in Spring School, a piece of road that was being done by the Clark's Court factory, that same building and Dusty Highway. He showed the bushes at Polaris that has nothing to do with him, and the project on Fort George that was almost finished since 2023, right? That has nothing to do with him either. Now, what is the $15,000 for transportation that Andy needs? $15,000. Then he needs money for additional solar lights, airport external beautification. We need some more exuras and so, and building supplies outstanding payments. And that's the Hubbards. They specify Hubbards for 2025, $589,379. Now we know that Hubbards is not the only hardware and the only company that they're still owing, right? But I guess you could only give a little at a time. Remember that short list from Lotto? Some checks are ready. Well, a lot more people get money from the Lottery Authority from them, but they give in a little bit at a time what they can afford. We come into Lotto too. We're going to come to Lotto, right? Now, $361,853.15 for ANSA, ANSA, and the ANSA coatings. That's for 2025. They're owing ANSA coatings. And no allocations for Build Back Better in 2026. The monies they're asking for is to replace funds used from other allocations. So they took monies from other allocations for the Build Back Better program. We don't know. And we're asking where the houses to show. right? Remember the monies from the CRIF? All of these monies and other monies that were donated to us, right? So, in other words, they're asking for money for Operation Cleanup for MIT. The question is, where are the houses? We still need to know how many houses was built, what monies was spent. Because remember, the 2024 supplemental, I believe, it was 2025, I don't think it was 25, right? Was, Andy got millions. As a matter of fact, $24.5 million from that supplemental for housing. 15 million went to 200 houses. Remember this? That was supposed to be sold at $50,000. Where are they? Where are these 200 houses plus a 26 one way and a 15 one way? A total of $24.5 million. And these houses were supposed to be built in St. Patrick and a few in St. Mark. But basically in St. Patrick after the Hurricane Beryl, right? The grand total for Andy, $30,751,267, the grand total. And now we come to vote 130 for Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell in infrastructure. And $6 million to provide additional subvention to the Grenada Tourism Authority. Okay, but the question is, why is the Grenada Tourism Authority asking for allocation under the Ministry of Infrastructure? What happened to the Ministry of Tourism, where we have two ministers, senior and junior minister. Senior minister, Adrian Persuader Thomas, and junior minister, Quince Britton. Are they just mere rubber stamps? I mean, we kind of know that, they're not, but they're not to make it so obvious, right? Now, 161 million to provide for implementation of priority road infrastructure development projects under the Design, Finance, Build module. Contractual arrangements with settlement of the contractual obligation in accordance with the agreement payment terms, MBIA to Westerholt Point, 68 million, Tempe to Monkuma, 21.6 million, Mabuya, 22.1 million, St. Paul's to Old Westerhall Main Road, 40.3 million, and other roads, 9 million. Other roads don't have a name. Now, with an election coming up, we need to know the other roads, because that's $9 million more into the campaign funds, really. Now, all these are, remember, all these were called out in the post-cabinet briefing, and there was no money. But we knew that was just sensationalism. We knew that, because you can call out dozens, and most of them was to start and finish in the first quarter. A few of them rolled over to the second quarter of 2026, which is done finished now. And not one of these projects the Prime Minister called out there is finished, completed, and we can say, yes, he did say not one. Road started, not finished, and they're now hurrying and hustling to do some of them because the election is here. It is here. Whether it's in June next year or it's now, or it's in September, or November, or January, or March, it is here. It is here. It within a year, it is here. Right? Now we have all of this, a grand total for the Prime Minister and his infrastructure, $167 million. Right? He's asking for. And these monies must be spent, let's bear in mind, within the next roughly 3 months. 3 months is pushing it. Because, of course, the next budget's supposed to read in the 2027 budget's supposed to be read in 3 months. But this money, it can't be rolled over into the 2027 budget, this supplemental budget. So all of these monies is asking for the next couple of months. We don't have the money. Revenues are down in every sector. And we don't have the money. But he's asking for these money. It's a miracle that has to happen for us to get that type of money. So according to Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, right, the new model design, finance, build, and maintain. I ain't hearing about the maintain again, like they drop off the maintain. Because before, it was finance, design, build, and maintain. Now is design, finance, and build. No, we ain't even maintain anymore. Because he said, that's a problem we have, our roads are not maintained, and the government is expected to maintain, and the government don't have the money to maintain up front, so that's what it fell into the new model. And that new model is a scam. I found that out a few weeks ago, quite by accident, in speaking to one of the new model contractors. And when I mentioned to him, I said, well, you know, I've had a purchase of our infrastructure to you guys. You're not putting up the money. I said, and that's why we are paying so much more for the projects. And he said to me, I don't know anything about this new model. What I know is that I am getting my monies quarterly over the next 5 years. And I was like, excuse me? Yes. So what we are refusing to do for our local contractors, we are doing for the foreigners. For instance, my friends, the Mabuya Road that here says 22 million. And I'm going to share with you something that was documents that was slipped into my DM only last evening. And it just fell straight into what I was dealing with here with the supplemental. And it says here, in this one, construction and industrial equipment, aka Renault. And under it, it has, right, XCD, which is EC dollars, 21,132,287.53 for 1 year, 2026, right? The year 2026. Now, it's very confusing because in the supplemental, they're asking for Mabuya, $22.1 million for Mabuya. Is that the same? I mean, $1 million difference, right, in what's on this document here. And I'm sure because we have a lot of, it's a lot of people that they have either or paid already to be paid, right? Both local and foreign. And you'll see the difference in the treatment that the foreigners get. The foreigners got all the $1 million contracts, and the locals are raking up at the bottom of the barrels, right? But we'll come to that in a minute. Now, what we need, and let's play let's hear what the Prime Minister had to say about this new model. Let's we forgot what he said about this new model.
New projects for 2026. Roads. We have four packages of new roads renovation repairs that we intend to undertake in 2026, and these are major roads. We are doing so under a design, build, and finance model. So what that means is almost all the contracts I've talked about before, the government has to find the money and pay the contractor in phases to do the work. For the new phases we are looking at here, the contractor has to be able to finance the construction himself or herself. And after the construction is completed, then we pay. And that is why it is called a finance, design, and build model. The contractor has to have the capacity to finance the works.
So why then are we asking for allocation for these roads, some of these same roads that you mentioned in that post-cabinet briefing? Why then are we asking for $22.1 million for Mabuya? Right? And on this list here, Mabuya they're saying it's 21.1, give or take $1 million, and it's for 1 year. So are we saying that over the next 5 years, annually we're paying, or quarterly, we're paying this company $22 million? Or is it that we're paying them all of the monies now, this $22.1 million? And if so, in any of the cases, what happened to the finance, design, and build? And as a matter of fact, some of these roads that we're talking about build, they're not being built. They're being resurfaced. The Point Celine to Wester Hall, that is resurfaced. The Mabuya, maybe you'd have to build some parts because of the extent of the slippage and that type of thing. But the other roads are not being built. Tempe to Mankuma, 21 million, right? The Prime Minister further explained that these contracts, it was in another press conference, will be paid over a period of 5 years. And that is exactly what the contractor told me, that he's getting his money quarterly, not no lump sum at the end. Right? After the entire project, according to Prime Minister, is when they was going to be paid. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, and in fact, the reason for bringing in the foreigners, told us that the local contractors cannot afford the new model. That is a reason for leaving them by the wayside and bringing in the foreigners. We were bamboozled. The local contractors were bamboozled. As I was saying, in the instance with Mabuya, right? The 22.1 million. In the supplemental for that project, is the payment supposed to spread out over the 5-year period? Because you can't ask for an allocation now for the next 5 years. That it can't happen. It doesn't happen that way, right? With budgets, it doesn't happen that way. You cannot allocate 5 years in 1 year, and you cannot allocate now for the next 5-year period. So which is it, Prime Minister? The math's not mathsing. The mat's not matching. And if you look on, I'll put on the channel, you can look at the costings, right? And as I said to you, the Mabuya is that one below, and the third one that says construction and industrial equipment. That is Reno Company. Construction and industrial equipment, and you see the 21-point-something million right there, right? Folks, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. Now, 967,712.47, which is almost 1 million difference between what's in the supplemental and what's on this document that was slipped to me, right? So I'm not sure, because we're not sure how the payment is being made. And we really would like the Prime Minister, we're calling on him to come back to us with the real story. Because I know of a contractor who received $500,000 to start a project in St. Patrick, a local contractor. So tell us the real story, right? He's a supporter, he supports you big time, we know, and he got monies up front. Now this gentleman was looking to borrow money to do the project because he didn't have the money to put up front. And he was still, why are you going to borrow money? Here. Right? Not everybody is that fortunate. But as local are happy for him. Right? Vote 136. Vote 136. Let's get to vote 136. Right? Hurricane Beryl response, 20 million for Tevin Andrew. Appropriation for the construction of post-Beryl restoration to finalize infrastructure, repairs, build back better homes, and material assistance. Now, this Build Back Better Homes that was shut down since June of 2025. The Minister of Finance was asked about it on a program. I think it was a To The Point program. He said yes. This is after Tanticlo said it was closed down on Heartbeat. The minister has asked about it because the guy who was interviewing him said, well, we heard the Minister of Housing say, is that so? He said, yes, it has to shut down. It can't go on forever. Then the Prime Minister had told us that it had shut down. Remember when they took it from Andy in November of 2025, and it was going to go to round up, to finish up in the new Ministry of Housing, where we're going to come to that, right? So they're asking for monies now for Build Back Better Homes and material assistance for housing under Beryl. 6.9 million. Hardware supplies, 7.6 million. Labor contracts, which represents labor, 5.5 million. All of that to go to Tevin so he could win the seat in Carriacou. They waste the money, embezzle the monies, did all sorts of things with the monies in Carriacou. We have built, what do you call those prefab houses in the Bishes, rotting. 5 of them, the other, how much hundreds, we don't know where they are, in what container, rotting somewhere. Right? Up until recently, Petit Martinique had only 4 houses built, right? And millions, what it was, 120 million? Remember, you remember on Beyond Beyond the Headlines, when Minister Andy Williams said how much money Eve spent, and how much money Tevin has spent in Carriacou already? And now they're asking for more and putting it under Beryl Relief and the Bay Back Better program. 2 million to provide additional appropriation for the continued development of road infrastructure in Carriacou. And according to Minister Andy, we can't eat roads. To facilitate architectural designs, structural engineering, initial preparation works on bus terminal, because you saw the AI bus terminal, right? So they earn money for that. Preparation works, huh? Hillsborough Town and Market Area in Carriacou, 500,000 for that. To provide additional appropriation for continued farm development, to include fencing, building pig pens, cistern for water, and main office completion. Grand total for the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs, Tevin Andrews campaign funds, $22,007,000. Vote 138, $6 million for home improvement and resilience program, and that's housing, to provide additional appropriation to support the Grenada Home Improvement and Resilience Program. Now, this has nothing to do with Project 17, nothing to do with Project Bay Back Better, maybe to do with Tantiglo and her little housing program within that ministry, our little Ministry of Housing. Well, was so unhappy with the first round of housing. And here is what Tantiglo had to say about this housing.
That came out clearly after the Beryl response.
Yeah.
We were looking for contractors to do small houses, and we were not getting contractors.
Yeah,
So then we
exactly.
hire people, they said they could build, and when you see what they build, it's a disaster, next disaster. You know, so we really need to get our people, especially our young men,
Yeah.
upgraded with
Trained,
skills.
yes.
Yeah. Because some of them, they've been around construction as a helper, but they have not acquired the skill to go on their own,
Right.
you know, and that is a challenge for us.
But there are people that can do it, Tantiglo. You're looking for your own. And I can't blame you. The Prime Minister said, tell us who you are and you'll get. If you're NDC, the others only get in because we don't know who you are. So there are others that can build, that they're not getting because they're not NDC. And so you guys are putting wrong pegs in square holes. You continue to do it, and not just in housing. Throughout the length and breadth of your departments, you are doing that. As I said, can't blame you. Maybe you'll get rough up if you all do otherwise, because that was the Prime Minister's orders. Show us who you are, you get paid. You get. We don't know who you all are. We don't know who all the NDC people are. Show us who you are. I'm going to ask my technician to get that clip, and we're going to play it for you guys.
We need to know one another. They have senior members and junior members and those who just joined. We need to know that all of us belongs to the National Democratic Congress. So we can't just argue and fight for what I will get, what I will get, what I will get, when you don't know your people. So sometimes the reason the other side getting is because we're not saying who are the real NDC people who need to get, because we don't know one another enough. So if we are telling the MP or the caretaker, these are our people, and let's go see them or bring the people, then we will know each other better.
Right? Lest we forget, the orders came from the top. So don't blame the young people. Y'all know they couldn't do it. Andy Williams said it. He went on the court in the Limes, and he scraped up some guys that was there. 2 weeks after, he said one of the young men was building houses and building roads. Impossible. Impossible. So, right? However, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell told us that, amongst others, it was announced in the 2026 budget, and the Minister of Finance said it, and then Prime Minister Mitchell told us that they were going to have a new Ministry of Housing. For some reason, he wasn't satisfied with the old Ministry of Housing, and they were going to institute a new Ministry of Housing. We've never heard anything about it again. We would like to know, where is this new Ministry of Housing? Who is the permanent secretary in that Ministry of Housing? How much staff is there in the new Ministry of Housing? What has that new Ministry of Housing done so far when it comes to housing? We still have a certain demographic of persons, what we call the low-income earners or low-income earners who are without homes. Since this administration come in, they have been left by the wayside. And houses are being built for middle and high-end workers, persons earning big money that can afford even the 17 up at Dunfermline, right? So we're asking Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, where is this new Ministry of Housing? Who's the new minister for the new Ministry of Housing? You see, these are the things that have flung at us. And we take it, we go with, and nobody come back to us. Like the breakdown for the $22 million that was spent on Project Polaris. That was came up in the 2026 budget for 2025. Monies that was spent on Project Polaris. The Prime Minister in New York, in the Tongwai meeting, when questioned on it, said they're going to give to us a breakdown. We're still waiting on that breakdown. Nobody's asking, right? And all these things get just slipped through the cracks and swept under the carpet. And swept under the carpet. Now, the rest of the supplementary budget you hear in the Parliament, I just thought there were some things that was glaring and popped out at me that I thought I should bring to you, right? And I would put up the documents of the contracts on the on the channel for you, right? And let's take if you look, it's there up on the screen, and let's do a quick run through of some of that there. And Janelle Smith, $352,480, and it says year 1, 2026. Carco Limited, Now, Calco Limited gets $5,365,399.75. Year 1, 2026. Randolph Vincent, $273,450.10, 2026, year 1, 2026. Kenny's Trucking and Equipment Services, $1,072,673, year 1, 2026. Kenny's get like a blind there. He in the million too. Matthew Mitchell, $1,406,177.51, year 1, 2026. Now, who's Matthew Mitchell? That's homework for y'all. Dylan Humphrey, $129,714.44, same year 1, 2026. Perkins and Will are here too. They're getting or got $1,320,413.40, 1 year, 2026. Now, Perkins and Will are the architects or the designers for the new hospital. Kevin Francis, $650,771, year 1, 2026. Farrers Construction Services Limited, $307.50. Farrers Construction, $281,875,000. Right? You move into the next one quickly, because you have to listen up. Namalco Construction Services Limited, $52 million, I'm sorry. That's Namalco. That's the Trinidad company. $52,891,078. Namalco Construction Services Limited again, $25,474,756. Construction and Industrial Equipment, that is Renault, $22,032,112. Calco, $667,587.94. Matthew Mitchell again, he's getting $293,101.20. Merriman's Construction and Equipment Rental, and they're getting $486,940.38. Calco, $5,700,422.35. General Earth Movers, that's another imported company, $20,146,683.96. Cecil Patrick, $162,656.92. And Vicab Engineering Consultant Limited, and they're getting $4,452,22.10, right? The other offset, it's going to be up on your screen. I just want to check out something here with, that's a different construction for construction and industrial equipment, Reno, right there. That's a different one from the one that I mentioned up there. Claudius Thaddeus Pair, $230,487.40. Harry's Equipment and Trucking Services, $414,810. If you notice, the names are consistent. Even with the locals, it's the same. It's consistent. Claudius Thaddeus Pair, $406,439. Harry's Equipment and Trucking Services, $521,603.50. All of those for year 1, 2026. That's why I don't understand the year 1 business and the 2026, and we need some kind of explanation. With that, Suvis Investment Inc., $296,018. Carco Limited, $40,318,473.30. Kevin Francis, $298,982.75. Kevin Francis, $650,771 and $71. That's no sense. Construction and industrial equipment as Reno, again, $21,132,287.53. Now pay attention to the monies payable to the foreign contractors compared to the contractors, of course. The foreigners landed the bigger jobs, of course, right? While the local contractors rake at the bottom of the barrel. And besides that, these foreign contractors are handpicked for the jobs. No tendering, going against the Public Procurement Act, Section 15 to be exact, where the shall be, and shall we know in law is must be tendering, right? And besides that, they are allowed to bring in their asphalt plants, their concrete batching plants, trucks and heavy equipment, their drivers and operators and workmen to Grenada. This is not okay and should never be okay with any administration, much less for an administration to encourage it, right? So these are things we're going to follow up on. More current affairs. Let's hear Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell in this video on what the NLA should be used for, period.
Sport is a profession, the same way you have to do it day in, day out. And we are proposing that for any sportsman or woman, regardless of the category, swimming, cricket, football, netball, volleyball, tennis, that once you are training to represent the people of PT Martinique, Carriacou, and Grenada, that the state of Grenada will pay you while training, will pay you while you are traveling, to ensure that you do not have to worry about where your next meal is coming from while representing Grenada. Now they're going to ask where the money is coming from. And I will answer this. Ask them what they are using the National Lotteries Authority money for. So we are not talking development of sports and culture, we will do it. And so we have every intention of ensuring that the public knows in a transparent manner what the National Lotteries Authority funds are being used for. And under an NDC government, it will be sports and culture, full stop.
So let me remind you of the shortlist, Prime Minister. And maybe you can explain to us which company, which individual here, what's the sporting, what culture aspect and sporting aspect are they involved in? Digital growth, Blue Bubbles, Andre St. Bernard. Well, you know who Andre St. Bernard is, right? Abstract Decor, Darren Brathwaite, Grenada Informer, Edward Frederick, and Cruz Creative. Now, further to that, Prime Minister Mitchell, Deacon Mitchell, under which one of those disciplines does DM the PM fall? Is it sports or culture? Since the National Lottery Authorities is funding the program DM the PM, be it, if you want to call it sponsor, whatever you want to call it, the National Lottery Authority money is paying for DM the PM. Now, the Government Information Services, GIS. You all remember that? We have GIS, right? It's a government information service. Now, is DM the PM a government information program? That's what it was purported to be, right? A government information program. Okay? Now, if it's a government information program, why isn't the Government Information Service, GIS, the one producing that program? Why isn't the GIS staff used to host the program? They're getting paid already. Why aren't they used to host the program, to do the technical work for the program? We have guys sitting there up there in GIS, right? Since coming into office in 2022, Prime Minister Mitchell, we were told that hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent on new equipment for the Government Information Service, the GIS. Where are those equipments? Or was those hundreds of thousands of dollars really spent on equipment? Because if you have that kind of equipment sitting there, taking up dust, that question really was for Orlando Romaine and not you, Prime Minister, because Orlando Romaine, at that point, was in charge of GIS. I'm not sure if he's still there. These days, he's very quiet, busy purchasing property, lands and properties throughout Grenada, bagging up before it's time to head out. It's time to take his leave, time to take their leave, right? Now, added to that, we have qualified media persons or personnel and journalists being paid at GIS. Leslie Ann Johnson, Sherry Ann Noel, Abigail McIntyre, just to name a few. Why are we using the National Lottery Authority monies to pay radio personalities and others outside of GIS? We just need an explanation. I have no issues in people getting their side gig, but when we broke, and when the National Lottery Authority is well on its way, if not yet broken, we have to ask the hard questions. And if DM the PM is an NDC campaign program, again, why is the National Lottery Authority monies funding DM the PM? When we have sports teams unable to travel and compete because the National Lottery Authority, the NLA, cannot afford or refusing to sponsor such teams as a result of lack of funds. Why was the under-18 and the under-23 athletic team that was supposed to go to the meet in Mexico The youngsters were promised monies for their tickets by the Ministry of Sport through the Lottery Authority. And when the time came, they were only able to afford some, less than half of the athletes, of the youngsters, were able to go to Mexico. It was a knockout games held in July. In fact, the 20th to the 22nd of July 2026. Without the full support from the National Lottery Authority, only a few members of the team were able to attend. The St. John's Football Sports Club won the competition here in Grenada and was invited to Trinidad to a regional club competition. When they went to the national or wrote to the National Lottery Authority for some financial support, they did not even get a response from the Lottery Authority. They rake and scrape, get donations, and they went to Trinidad to return on Sunday, the 26th July. Turns out that the competition ended on that day, and they had a match on that day, had a game on that day. So they, of course, they were winning the competition. I think eventually they won the competition. They were the winners. They stayed to play the game. They were put out of the hotel, and not because that was the day they were supposed to leave, and they didn't have the monies to stay on an extra couple of days. So they were put out of the hotel. They were in the streets. The people in Trinidad that hosted them ended up, they got a team home, a team house there where they stayed. They for the few days left, a clubhouse for the few days they had left. They won the competition, and they had to stay longer than even that because, of course, they had to change their flight. And a football team is 11 already, and I'm sure they had extras, and then the management team, right? So it was difficult to get a flight to Grenada around that time. You know, it was Carnival and those Trinis coming down. So they had to stay. Well, luckily they were able to stay at that clubhouse. To date, the National Lottery Authority did not respond to them. We're talking about sporting clubs. We're talking about our young athletes. The Prime Minister said, sports and culture, full stop. What is DM the PM doing in there? What is DM the PM doing in there? Information reaching me is that the National Lottery Authority well is drying up. I mentioned that to you in a way already, because I heard it was coming. Meanwhile, in a notice put out on Friday, August the 14th, 2023, by the National Lottery Authority. Meanwhile, in a notice put out on Friday, August the 14th, 2026, by the National Lottery Authority, it reads, "Dear agents, please be advised that all lottery sales and draws are suspended with immediate effect due to unsafe health conditions at the lottery's premises. Further notice will be given once it is safe to resume operations. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation," the NLA. Now, apparently, and information reaching me from reliable sources is that they have an issue with mold, right? In their office on the Carenage, the National Lottery Authority, the office on the Carenage, and all of the workers, some has fallen sick, and all of the workers were sent home, if you want to say that, so to speak, because of that, and the union came in and had them removed and sent home and barred from working under those conditions. We can't forget Norman Gilbert. We cannot forget that. And we have these issues. The Ministry of Youth and Sports, the staff is working under those conditions. The minister said, number 10 said, they cannot afford to send them to work from home like the Ministry of Education is. And so they're working in mold and mildew, right? Okay. So they said the main office on the Carronade has mold, and the workers were evacuated. Then on Saturday, August the 15th, right, there was an advisory put out by the NLA. The National Lottery Authority's NLA advises the public that all operations involving the sale of the local draw games and the conducting of the related draws are suspended until further notice. The following games may remain available for purchase at all authorized lottery agents in the Tri-Island State, Super 6, In-Stake Cash, and Scratch. Please also be informed that the NLA's main office on the Carronade and the service centers at Grenville and the St. George's are closed until further notice. The NLA apologizes for any inconveniences caused. Thank you for your patience and understanding by management. Now, apparently, the same goes for Grenville and the St. George's office, right? Mold. So they have a problem with mold. Okay. They do have a problem with mold. They have a problem with another M, money. And so it's safe to say NLA was saved by mold. Just like the government of Grenada in 2024 was saved by burial. When they got the monies and they just and spend it, they had to pay bills and so on. So they were happy to receive the CRIF payout to use saved by burial. The lottery saved, authority saved by mold, right? Now look how the NDC mash up 44 years of existence of the NLA. Or they're well underway. Joining the Grenada Development Bank, the GDB, T.A. Marichaud College, Community College, TAMCC, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Marketing and National Importing Board, they're all placed Bishop. I mean, those are the ones that are visible and right there in our faces now that we can talk about. A young lady said to me recently, she said, and she was on the job. I went to a restaurant, she's one of the waitresses there, and she said to me, the place depressing, eh? I mean, we wasn't talking politics. Actually, I was waiting to pay my bill. And she said to me, the place depressing, eh? She said, I doesn't even want to leave home on a day to come to work. This is a job she held for as long as I could remember. She's been at that restaurant. One of the popular restaurants in the south of the island. She said, I doesn't want to leave home. And indeed, it is very depressing. We had a very, very bad, if you want to call it that, for want of a better word, carnival for small businesses, maybe even some large ones. But I know for sure retail sales was down. and people are hurting. The place full of bush, and no the bushing program or best program. Remember they changed the name to the best program? Y'all think it's too things they can let them do already? I don't know if we'll have time to bring back some of them to you guys. They called it the best program, some beautification, some something. Long, fancy things. The NA was abused and raped by the former chairman of the board, Mr. William Batiste, and his lover, Cindy Henry, the managing director of the authority. It began with Batiste hiring his girlfriend on his own, without the knowledge of the board, who's supposed to do the hiring, the board of directors, supposed to do the hiring of the general manager, according to the NLA Act. She was paid $16,000, $7,000 more than the previous general manager. The former general manager received $9,000 salary. And then there was the $200,000 invoice from the chairman's company, Catwood Stationery, a business that was just resurrected after the 2022 election, died and buried, was resurrected and presented an invoice for in excess of $200,000 for furniture, new furniture. After June 23rd, 2022, he also presented an invoice to Gravel and Concrete, close to that figure, for new furniture as well. He, Mr. Batiste, William Batiste, was on the board of directors of Gravel and Concrete as well. The chairman of Gravel and Concrete, Sylvester Quallis, was a director, or is still a director actually, on the Lottery Authority Board. Now, there's a big parish clique. William Batiste, Sylvester Quallis, and our chief of staff, Teddy St. Louis. They have a thing going, you know? Good friends and colleagues, right? Now, William Batiste, the former, I will get to why he reached former, chairman of the Lottery Authority, Sylvester Quallis, chairman of Gravel and Concrete. There he's sitting high and dry in Ottawa, Canada, as the consulate there. He is still holding on, and they allowed him, to the chairman of Gravel and Concrete, right? We still want to know how he qualified for the ambassadorial job that he's holding in Ottawa. We still would like to know that. Okay? And then we have Teddy St. Louis, our chief of staff, the Prime Minister's chief of staff. And they, among others, are enabled and sometimes aided and abetted by Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell. Case in point, the chairman of Gravel and Concrete, Sylvester Quallis, brought an invoice for $20,000 to the accountant of Gravel and Concrete at that time, which is no longer there, from William Batiste for payment to the law firm St. Louis and St. Louis, owned by Teddy St. Louis, for legal fees. with no explanation. Who legal fees for? Why Gravel and Concrete is being presented this invoice? The accountant at the time pushed back on it, of course, but you have enough balls to push back on something like that when it involves that clique. So, though she refused initially, of course, eventually, she was forced to sign off on the payment. No, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Being enabled. Remember the cement gate? 6,000 slings of cement from the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, the consignee Icon Inc. of Teddy St. Louis. The question was asked, why was the first entry cancelled and the invoice on the second entry 60% less than the invoice that was on the first entry? I asked and asked till I'm blue in the face. I'm still asking for an explanation. We yet to get an answer. This is the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff we're talking about. Why did the Custom and Excise Department pass such an entry? You think an ordinary little man like me or any other small business within hustling could do something like that and get away with it? No. No. They'll be fined, embarrassed, Yeah. The National Lottery Authority purchased a commercial building on Melville Street, St. George's. Or should I say, William Batiste and Cindy Henry, because they're the only two signatories, on the NLA account at the time. Imagine that. The chairman of the board and the managing director in a relationship, and they're the only two signatories on the account. They use lottery monies to purchase the building, a commercial building on Melville Street. The building was occupied with tenants. Only the NLA was paying the mortgage, and the rent monies were collected and delivered to the law firm of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff in Grenville, St. Andrews. I gave him several opportunities. I asked to come forward, Mr. Chief of Staff, and tell us if this is true or not. And if it is true, why you were collecting the money. Why was the rent collected from the building owned by the NLA, collected and delivered to the law firm St. Louis and St. Louis? No, there's a story about the monies being collected, who collected it and whatever, but I'm going to hold back on it for now. Now, according to the managing director, the building was bought to house the main office, and they were supposed to relocate there during the first quarter of 2024. 2 years and counting, and that never happened. Now, they have to be evacuated and sent home, and they have a building sitting, $1 million building sitting on Melville Street, empty. Apparently, since the news broke on Simon Says, they gave notice to their tenants, but it's sitting there empty. Is it because they don't have the money to retrofit? But why give notice to the tenants? But you see, all of this I've said before. They were supposed to move in there since January, of 2023, 2024, the first quarter of 2024. 2 years and counting. William Batiste and Cindy Henry wrote a check to William Batiste to renovate the Victoria Park, unknown to the ministers and ministries of sports and infrastructure. A check of $275,000 was written for the job, and another for $295,000 for overruns. This thing is not Nancy's story, you know. This is real life thing that happened. This is real life thing that happened. A check for $200,000 was written and signed by William Batiste and a skills training center on Scott Street, St. George's. To date, nothing happened. No skills training took place. Rent was being paid and still is being paid for that space. Now, according to my reliable sources, the facilitator for the program was brought in from Montreal, who was also, and is also being paid as salary after receiving $70,000 for a preliminary proposal that to date is still in proposal stage. You would have seen while I was talking the center that was supposed to host this skills training center, $200,000. What you see there is $200,000 worth. Nothing happened. For 4 years, the NLA have been paying rent for an empty space. The NLA had or has, not sure if it's still happening, Hexive, a business owned by ambassador and advisor to the government of Grenada on ICT and the creatives, Orlando Romain, on a monthly retainer. No, Hexive owned by Orlando Romain, you got that, right? They are on a monthly retainer of $17,825 per month. And according to the staff, I'm quoting here, to do absolutely nothing. And they explained why they said that. Because his work is always left to be salvaged by employees. And my understanding is there are several ministries and other statutory bodies that are that Exile is on the list for retainers, and Exile gets a lot of the government jobs, all the very expensive jobs, and when he can't handle all, he has someone that it spills over to. Yep. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, checks were written to cover invoices coming from Mr. William Batiste and his company, Catwill Stationery, $200,000 there, another $200,000 here, $100,000 there, $150,000 for $68,000, etc., etc. For stationery, for anything the NLA needs. If the NLA needed a pot, Catwill will provide the pot. Air condition, Catwill would provide the air condition. If anything, not just stationery and furniture. In October, Friday, October the 18th, 2024, the managing director, Cindy Henry, and the chairman of the board of directors went to Paris, France, for a one-day meeting that no one else in the authority could have accounted for. The couple spent 2 weeks, and that costed the authority $36,000. 2 weeks before the finance trip, they both visited the United States of America, the second trip in that year, and it costed the NLA $40,000 each trip. Folks, and there are so much more. There are so much more. The NLA was paying a part-time PR personnel $5,000 monthly, who held a job as PR manager in a firm, a huge firm, one of the biggest firms in Grenada, long-standing, biggest, oldest, long-standing, reputable firm in Grenada. Held a full-time job there and is being paid. And why? Because she's very close friends with the managing director. Well, that wasn't enough, and I guess the money was looking better, and she resigned her position from the firm and is working full-time with the NLA. I'm not going to tell you because I couldn't confirm it, what I was told her new salary is at the NLA. But we know it's more than 5,000, right? Temporarily, she was making 5, right? Word is also that this individual is now, as she's prominent in the lottery authority, is now a temporary HR for the stadium authority. Allegedly so, the stadium authority. Now, remember, Ronald Redhead was the first minister for youth and sports of this Deacon Mitchell-led administration. And when he was fired in January of 2024, Senator Jonathan Lacrette took the position. The staff of the NLA begged the minister, Lacrette, meeting him all in the supermarket, asking him to come in and check the books and see what's happening at the authority. He went, they were happy to open the books, to show the receipts, to show the corruption and the fraud that was taking place behind the walls of the NLA. Minister Lacrette fired William Batiste on the spot. And of course, William Batiste, a member of the clique, went running to the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, for cover. He's a nation builder's colleague of the Prime Minister's. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell ordered Prime Minister Lacrette to rescind the letter, to take back the letter, and that him and the Attorney General, Cindy Daughter, will carry out their own investigation. When asked about the corruption inside the NLA, this is what Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell had to say.
Would things like that worry you in terms of the optics politically? I mean,
No, I think
there are a bunch of people now with too much time on their hands trying to get their job back because of corruption issues.
we're as transparent a government, I think, as Grenada has seen in my lifetime, for sure. And I think if any issues arises and there's credible evidence of stuff, as a Prime Minister, I'm prepared to deal with it. But what I will not...
Did you look into the lotto matter, though?
Yes, I looked at...
Because I looked into it, and there seemed to have been a bit of credibility to some of the issues.
I looked into the issue, and I just said to you, which is why I talked about how you handle conflicts in terms of what the legislation says and what has to happen, right? So I'm saying when people just simply make spurious allegations and come up with all kinds of fanciful stuff, you have to be careful that you don't allow people to draw you in and to make decisions as if you are Jesus Christ and he who is the third sin cast the first stone. I'm saying the very nature of our laws recognize that you have situations where someone who serves on a board may have their firm or their business and so on bidding for work that a particular entity is offering. And there's a process and procedure that has to be followed. So I'm saying if someone makes, and you're saying do I look into the Lotto thing simply because I'm hearing media allegations, if someone makes a credible accusation, we will obviously investigate it and then we make necessary decisions that has to be made. But too often, and I think the National Democratic Congress government in the past was allowed itself to be hoodwinked into trying to go after its own and into trying to punish its own and to hold itself to that standard that's almost impossible. When other people are doing all kind of things left, right, and center and getting away with it. So I'm saying we are living in a society where nobody's perfect. And we have to be careful that we don't try and hold people in public office to a perfect standard and then try to hold them at that.
We are living in a society where no one's perfect. We can't hold our politicians to this high standard, and no one is Jesus Christ. And you guys heard that the language coming from the Prime Minister? No one is perfect. But we're not going to sit here and allow our politicians to sit in our cabinet and in our parliament and be openly corrupt, allow, aid and abet corruption with their friends and colleagues and say nothing about it. They call you baby Jesus. Why? So every time I hear this clip, I cringe, which I'm sure most of you do. And I'm hoping that nobody outside of Grenada hear it. Because if that's your excuse for the corruption that's happening, and all this time the Prime Minister defending the corruption in the lottery there, when he did that interview, he never stepped into, and I believe to date, has never stepped into the office of the lottery authority. What about the investigation that you promised the minister? Well, we know subsequently the minister lost his job and the culprit remained and continued. It is alleged that he was told, stop writing checks to himself and his company. I don't know what to do. Maybe I will write it to somebody else, put another name on the list. I don't know. Like they were doing with the ones that were being changed, cashed in at Gravel and Concrete. Lottery, writing checks to one of the staff, well, not two, four, a member of the Gravel and Concrete staff. The checks are going in names, so sister name, friends' names, but the checks are being changed up at Gravel and Concrete. National Lottery Authority checks. So no surprise, friends, if the well in the NLE is well on its way to drying up. No surprise there. No matter the amount of information we had put out there on William Batiste, him and his lover Cindy Henry, they were left to wreak havoc on the NLE. Cindy Henry is still there. Then on March the 4th, 2026, we woke up to a rumor that William Batiste was given an ultimatum from the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, amidst mounting financial scrutiny and political pressure to resign. William Batiste did give his resignation to the board of directors, but to date, we the people have no clue the reason for his resignation. We have not heard anything from the powers that be. We have not had an official statement from the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, and the government of Grenada, from the minister responsible for the NLA. By the way, the minister responsible for the NLA and her sons now have a caravan and government property in the Grenville bus terminal selling eateries. I'll show you you get it, you'll see it. If you look there now, you'll see it. See? Yeah, eateries. I just had to splice it in there because it's what you can get now. Grasp and grab it. Everybody come. Set up yourselves good because we ain't going back there and we have to survive after that. After that, it will be a long time coming, and some of us, we've run out of time, age-wise. Yeah? So let's just set up ourselves. We and we children, we brother, we sister, mother, father, contracts, who getting contracts, sister name on house, sister name on land in St. David, sister, or friend name and car rentals. All kind of drama, truck, boat. Everybody pick a mill. So the people maintain that William Batiste will not get away with the embezzlement of the people's money and the corruption and fraud him and his lover Cindy Henry were engaged in for 4 years at the National Lottery Authority. They must be held accountable. So Mr. William Batiste can't just walk in and hand in a resignation, and that's the end of the story. I know that the Accounts Committee in the Parliament has asked for an editing. I hope we get that sooner than later. We need to know. And while they're at it, I hope the Accounts Committee will ask for others, like the Gravel and Concrete, the Grenada Development Bank, and others. The Ministry of MIT, for one. Right? They must be all held accountable. The thing is, the workers of the NLA had warned, they had warned that if the managing director, Cindy Henry, and her lover, William Batiste, was not removed from the NLA, the authority, the National Lottery Authority, that the authority will go bankrupt. And I quote, that was in October 2024, said to me, we are calling on the Prime Minister, who professed to be the advocate for the people of Grenada, to please advocate on the behalf of the employees of the NLA. We are asking the Prime Minister to please investigate the corruption that is happening inside the NLA. The chairman and the general manager are money leeches. They are using the NLA money to flaunt and lavish themselves. Workers are treated badly. Workers have no advocate. no one to hear our burning issues. The general manager and the chairman will bankrupt the organization through their corrupt acts. End of quote. And I want to read that last piece again. The general manager and the chairman will bankrupt the organization through their corrupt acts. End of quote. As the saying goes, so say, so done. The NLA, as I understand it, was supposed to be the largest sponsor for the Spice Mass celebrations. Sports, culture, and nation building, yeah? Well, apparently, the NLA fell short, and so the price checks fell short as well. And in some instances, only promissory notes came in the envelopes. On the evening of August 14, 2026, right on the heels of the celebration, was the Spice Mess 2026 official prize-giving ceremony. Impressive, right? Yeah. When I saw it, I was impressed. I said, wow, you know? The participants of the competition, they were there to collect their prizes. Held at Pier 57, you know, they love a VIP. They love it. And you just bet that whatever the gathering is, there's a VIP section, food and drinks, never under $10,000. Well, to me, 15,000 song as their trademark number. More icing on cardboard, because big fanfare up at Pier 57, right? Envelopes dishing out. Not only the recipients were not warned, they found out on opening their envelopes that either they didn't get the amount they were told, and in some cases less than half of what they were supposed to receive, or they got a promissory note in an envelope. Remember the Curfte Games and the NLA and the hotel, the royalty, and having to call week. Every week is a different week for the monies that the NLA was supposed to pay to them for the athletes. Remember that? It's been coming to us slowly. It's been happening. It's been happening. What next for the NDC? And as I was informed, the same thing happened at the 2025 prize giving. Now, some of the artists started to speak out. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So some of them, and apparently did not make a fuss, and nothing happened in the entire year. Nobody say, well, okay, here the rest of your check. Because they said nothing. I guess they said, okay, they give us that. And they do it this year again. Here is, let me just give you a snippet of what happened up at Pier 57. Just a bit. It doesn't. It's not related to any one thing. I just want to show you up where they were at Pier 57.
Allow me to recognize the presence of our acting Prime Minister, the Honorable Lennox Andrews, Senator the Honorable Adrian Thomas, Minister for Tourism, the Creative Economy and Culture, Senator Quince Britton, Parliamentary Secretary with responsibility for culture, Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Desiree Stephen, Chairman and Board of the Spice Mass Corporation, CEO of Spice Mass Corporation, and members of Spice Mass Corporation, distinguished guests, sponsors, stakeholders, dedicated supporters, and cultural icons. And of course, most importantly, our remarkable award recipients. On behalf of the Ministry of Culture and the Spice Mass Corporation, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to the 2026 prize giving ceremony, an evening dedicated to celebrating excellence, creativity, and the amazing spirit that defines our people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Vichy Martinique.
I take this opportunity to apologize for the breeze, the wind in the mic, because I cannot believe we're hosting a national event and you can't hear what the host is saying. The wind kicking on and the mic away. Dress blowing, flowing, everything. But I hope you read there that we had an acting prime minister. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell and his entourage left Grenada in a private jet, I was told, to go to Spain and Qatar. He had his Polaris team with him. They are looking for funds, I believe. But if my memory serves me right, the Minister of Finance in 2025 told us that he went to Qatar and that he was given the promise that they would get the monies. That when he had the money, that's what he said. They have the money. They got all the monies they needed. Wasn't a promise. They got all the monies they needed for Project Polaris. So, not sure. Maybe they went to collect the check. And maybe we'll hear when the Prime Minister, well, he should have returned already. So maybe we'll hear at the next post-cabinet briefing how much monies they got in Qatar or Spain for Project Polaris. But as I say, I apologize for the breeze that blowing away the mic and the dress of the press secretary. It seems like it is indeed an M or two M's that are plaguing the NLE, mold and money. Let's move on to the destruction of the 280-year-old General Post Office, now called GPC, the Grenada Postal Corporation, 280 years old. In the meantime, we are asking again, what is going on with the Postal Corporation? Is the bond lifted yet so Grenada can resume shipping small packages to the United States of America? Is the Postal Corporation still paying that $40,000 rent for the building on the Carenage that is not in use? In fact, it is not ready for use. Work on the building has stopped more than 2 years, almost 2 years now. And according to the chairman of the board, Mr. Adrian Francis, the retrofitting had stopped pending a review of the project. This after over $800,000 was already spent on that building. Workers and members of the board are questioning what they call the disappearance of over $3 million from the GPC account, monies that was put aside for the company's headquarters. so to speak, which they were going to purchase land and build, not rent or lease, not lease that a building, that one they building on the they were retrofitting on the Carenage. They're still at the stadium, which is very inconvenient for a lot of customers. And for them, I understand they're looking for a place to go, but they have the money is not available for them to find a place and pay rent and so they're still over there at the stadium. 280 years and NDC destroy the GPC, the Grenada Postal Corporation. Principal, teachers, parents, and guardian students, the general public would like to know when the Ministry of Education will reopen for business after the death of the prominent secretary, former PS, because they had reverted his position, Norman Gilbert, who died from respiratory issues in late April, on the 27th of April, as a matter of fact, 2026. After his funeral on May 28th, 2026, where it was publicly revealed that Norman was exposed to mold and mildew as he was vindictively victimized by the NDC-led, Deacon Mitchell-led administration, subsequently causing his death, shortly after which the workers from the Ministry of Education was sent home, the ministry was shut down, and the workers, to date, is still working remotely. In the meantime, communications with the Ministry of Education and the public, including principals, teachers, are more or less extinct. And they are now saying enough is enough, as expressed by a particular individual. And I have the letter here written, enough is enough. Is anyone actually in charge of the Ministry of Education right now? Is anyone overseeing this remote work arrangement and monitoring whether the public is being adequately served? How long does it take for a worker to respond to an email? How difficult is it for an employee to send a simple email acknowledging a request or providing an update? When emails go unanswered for weeks and phone calls seem to go nowhere, what exactly are members of the public expected to do? At this point, this remote work arrangement is beginning to look less like an alternative way of conducting business and more like an extended vacation. And that is deeply frustrating, especially at such a crucial time. School is about to reopen. Teachers are awaiting responses regarding various forms of leave. Parents and students have ongoing matters that require attention. Principals and teachers need timely information, and most importantly, some form of reliable and open communication with the ministry. Remote work should never mean unreachable work. People have deadlines, responsibilities, and important decisions to make. The Ministry of Education is an essential public service, particularly at this time of year. Whatever arrangements are in place, there must be accountability, accessibility, and a system that actually works for the people who depend on it. I am beyond disgusted, frustrated, and disappointed at this point. The situation needs to be addressed urgently. We deserve answers. We deserve communication. And we deserve a Ministry of Education that is accessible when it is needed most. While the Minister of Education is campaigning, he building road and eating because he's going to beat the political leader of the NNP, MLNP, and that's all they care about right now, is him winning the seat, and everybody is doubling down so that he can win that seat. He don't care about our nation's children and what is good. What about the e-books and the military computers for the new Form 1s? Have they received those yet? 3 months ago, and our Ministry of Education, 3 months, is still operating from staff members' individual homes. Our Ministry of Education are operating from the staff members' home. Did you hear me? What does that say about an administration that's supposed to be governing this country? Education being one of their main pillars, operating with a failed school feeding program, a failed free tuition program. The government has failed to keep up with the supplying of schools, the stipend for the schools to replace the tuition the students would have paid outside of the free tuition program. Those monies help with providing the classroom with materials and other amenities needed for the proper functioning of the schools. So much so, the president of the Grenada Teachers Union, the GUT, and his executive, in an effort to prop up the NDC, in a memo to all members, the Grenada Union of Teachers pledged $500 to every classroom per year. If you look on your screen, you'll see the memo, right? A failed school bus pilot program, a failed e-book system / military computer system. Ultimately, a failed Ministry of Education. The government of Grenada rented a whole hotel to relocate the Ministry of Finance, spent months outside of it while they paid rent in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. While the financial complex is under renovations. In that building, the FIU is housed, and the CBI / IMA the office, the CBI office is housed in their hotel. Why can't the government find a place to house the Ministry of Education? This is the 3rd year since 2024. Every year, the government has been trying to remove mold in that building with bleach and water. They moved out and back in twice already. Same thing this time around. Almost 3 months, they are still out. We are now living in a banana republic, folks. We fall nothing short of that. We fall nothing short of a banana republic. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. It's always a pleasure conversing with you, trying to keep them honest. Thank you for viewing yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place, where facts come first. And remember, a better Grenada is possible. Bye now. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.